Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mondo Cinema Film and TV Workshops Facebook page or Daniela Sione's YouTube channel if you're watching this later on. I am here with two of my favorite guests who we had on last year, David H. Lawrence's 17th and Daniel O'Day. If you didn't meet them last year, David is one of my really good friends in Los Angeles, and Dan is just some guy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
David
me not so much.
David created one of my favorite apps of all time for actors. A lot of the actors in the audience will know about Rehearsal Pro, which saves my life every day that I have to learn lines. And I first met him through a mastermind in Florida. But David is obviously, if you don't know, look him up. He's a fantastically well-known actor of film and television and a voiceover artist of many, many years. So far back, he goes so far back that he did books on tape, if you remember that, and now is an audiobook narrator. And Dan O'Day is prolific in the world of radio. He's a huge internationally known radio consultant in many areas of radio, but including and especially creating successful radio advertisements. And he is also a comedy writer. Together, they have created a fantastic class called ACX Masterclass, which trains people in the world of narrating, producing, marketing audiobooks. And they are responsible. Their students have done, that they know of, at least last count, it was just approaching 5,000 audiobooks. Do you guys know the number now?
Over 6,000.
Over 6,000 that you know of, because some people use pen names.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, that's 1 out of every 30 books that has been created on the ACX platform in the last 5 years.
That's phenomenal.
So, yeah, it's really a crazy number when you think about it. I mean, you think, oh, great, 1 out of 30. What is that, 3%? Yeah, it is. And it's like, I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah.
Wow, that is a huge, as we say in some of my programs, that is a huge hallelujah. Anytime we have a win, we say hallelujah. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I love having you guys on because although you're not directly like, I don't teach a voiceover or anything like that, but I have so many people in my audience that can greatly benefit by what you guys are doing. And I just want to outline, I want people to type in the chat. If you are in category 1, which is performers who want to learn how to narrate other people's books, that would be category 1. We have a lot of performers in my audience. Category 2 is entrepreneurs who want to elevate their business by creating a book that is probably nonfiction, a nonfiction book, or audiobook. I think and that's the category I'm in. That's category 2. Type a 2 in the chat if you're here and that applies to you. We'll talk more, but I'm going to grill you guys about this because this is actually my goal this year as an entrepreneur, is to release an audiobook and a book simultaneously to elevate my brand. And the third category is, of course, I have a lot of writers, a lot of creative writers who would be writing fiction books. Sorry, I'm playing with who would be creating fiction books and probably also narrating them, because a lot of them are writer performers. So type a 3 in the chat if that's you. A lot of people will be watching this in replay. So okay, they're just saying they can see us. No one's typing a 1 or 2 in the chat. I think there's a little time delay, so we'll give them a sec. But I see already from the people that are here, they're all content creators. So far, yeah, 3 entrepreneurs, so 3 number 2s. So sorry for all right. So because we did last time, we talked with you guys, we did the 7 myths of audiobooks, which was great, and we got into a lot of the basic misconceptions of audiobooks. I want to take tonight into a bit of a pragmatic turn in terms of the benefits to entrepreneurs, without forgetting the actors in the audience, but definitely the benefits to entrepreneurs or people who want to wear all the hats, because this is something that your program does particularly brilliantly. And your program is like, we're in it. You're only open it up like at least once a year, usually once a year-ish, and we're in it. We're on the second last day when you're in well, we'll talk about that later, but because we're in it, I want to just get right down to brass tacks. But I touched on this, but from both of you, why does it benefit? Why are audiobooks why is narrating and or producing and or marketing audiobooks a skill that would benefit people in terms of being a side hustle?
David?
So I would say a good percentage of the people that we train are engaged in other things. They're either actors in other spaces or other categories, they're voiceover talent in other categories, or they're people that do jobs that are completely unrelated to performance. You know, they're salespeople, or they're customer service reps, or they're, you know, creatives in other categories, writers, producers, directors, etc. And the good news about audiobooks is you can make it your sole pursuit if you want to, but it's far more common for people to have this as one of the tendrils of income and pursuit that they have. And it lends itself to that. I mean, you know, I'm an actor. I wouldn't dream of cutting off everything else that I do, which includes teaching and coaching and consulting. I wouldn't, in fact, I loved being one of your speakers at your recent event. I wouldn't dream of leaving that behind just to do this one thing, even though this one thing is awesome, right? And I think that when you do audiobook narration and production, it helps you become better at other areas of performance. You learn more about how, if you're a writer, your work is going to be produced. If you're not in a world of performance and you're doing this on the side, it helps you be a better speaker. It helps you be a better communicator. It helps you be a better someone who has better knowledge. You know, one of the things that I learned from producing and narrating audiobooks is stuff. You know, recently when Damar Hamlin had his horrifying incident in a football game, I had at one time narrated a book called League of Denial, which was about the NFL's concussion crisis. And part of that book was all of the other medical issues around how brutal a sport football is. And I'm like a massive football fan. I'm a Los Angeles Rams season ticket holder. And I football's been something I've followed my whole life, but it's cruel sometimes. It's hard. But when I saw this happen, everything in my brain clicked a little bit differently, I think, than just the average person. Like, oh, that was a tough hit. You know, I was really, really concerned about his life. And so, sorry, it's a little emotional.
Yeah.
Audiobooks can do that for you. They can put you in a position that you're not only making money by doing the work, you're not only making, you know, getting better as an actor by learning how to do that sort of thing, but you're also adding to your knowledge base and adding to your awareness of the world. And that's one of the reasons I think it's just so awesome.
Oh, that's such a good. Sometimes I do hear some of the voiceover artists talk about that, like what they learned in their. So yeah, I wouldn't have even thought of that right away. And Dan,
For entrepreneurs, it's another way to expand your reach, and another way to communicate with your existing audience or followers. And that if you're going to voice the audiobook yourself, then, which, as a, you know, is very common with what they call gurus in the entrepreneur space, then you're increasing your personal connection with your tribe. I mean, you now become not just the expert on this topic and the person has a great blog or whatever it is, but this is the voice that was in your head for 10 hours or 12 hours or 15 hours while you were doing stuff. And that's real powerful. It's a more personal connection than a print book, and which obviously doesn't mean it's better, but it's one more way and it's really personal.
Yeah. And also you're able to reach more people, because some people have committed to consuming knowledge by relaxing in an easy chair with a printed book or an ebook on their Kindle or whatever. And then there are people who simply consume content and information via their earbuds. And I wouldn't dream of, I'm actually in the middle of writing a book right now. And I wouldn't dream of putting that book out without putting out an audiobook version as well as a paperback and an ebook. And, you know, it's just like, it's 2023. It's like, this is the way it's done. So
I'm one of those people, by the way, because I'm over 50, my eyes are tired, and sometimes I work all day in front of the computer. So I love nothing better than to, like, I have a subscription to Audible. So I'm like super excited about joining your program and learning this, because this is, for me, that's half the motivation. I feel like once I learn how to do it with my first book, that it will become addictive, because I have 5 books I want to write. And I feel like once I learn that first one, it will just be a snowball effect.
well, that's a really good point, because one of the things that I think people have a misconception about when it comes to audiobooks is what a massive amount of work it is all at once. It's not an insignificant amount of work, but it doesn't occur all in one day. And I think people often think that. They're like, well, that's a 20-hour book. You know, it must have taken them 2 days straight to record that, you know. And the truth is that when we train you on the process and the strategies and the tactics, it's a set of tools that over time you just lather, rinse, repeat. You reuse over and over and over. And it's a series of small islands of work, you know, like, I think one of the most relaxing things about audiobook narration is that it doesn't occur hours and hours at a time. It occurs 20 minutes at a time, or a half an hour at a time, however long a chapter takes. Usually for me, we train people to do a chapter at a time, and then give your voice a rest. And while you're doing that, go back and edit and master the chapter that you just recorded. And that makes it so much more manageable, so much more chewable. When I'm not doing my own work in my home studio, if I'm working at a publisher or at another studio, I mean, we work for half an hour or so, and then we go take a break in the break room, you know, and chit chat and like sip some tea, whatever it is. It is so much calmer and less onerous than so many people imagine that it is. It's just lovely. So
That's the other thing with my coffee breakers. For those who might not know, I have a group for creative online entrepreneurs called Coffee Break MBA, and I'm always looking for opportunities to make a good living from home. And that grew out of the pandemic. But like being able to work from home at your own pace, you know, most of us in Coffee Break are over 40. So it is a reality that we want to start to work for ourselves, own our own content, you know, put our own content out there. I learned really late in life how much more valuable that is than working for pay for someone else. So we have people doing both, working for pay for, you know, but we have people who are just doing this, creating content and businesses that work from home. So I see this as like a really great complement to what we do in Coffee Break. It's obviously a great complement for the writers who are putting out original books. At the end of today, before we go, I'm going to announce a few bonuses that will appeal to those people as well. But yeah, in terms of who this is for, besides the group, I mean, you have some examples in your on your page. By the way, I'll say this link a few times, but I got a short link for this, and that is bit.ly/ACX Mondo, ACX Mondo. That's where you can check out what is happening right now with their program in terms of they have put out a video series, and they put out an offer that we're going to talk more later about, but that's the link.
are you gonna put that link in the chat on Facebook and YouTube and whatnot?
I'll put it. Yeah, I'll put it. Sorry that I have to look down because I have to do it on
No, that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you. bit.ly/ACX Mondo, Mondo, and I'll put it there. Thanks everyone for your patience with that. Sorry, I'm not very techy. So this is the first time I've ever done a short link for anything. So
You're doing great.
we learn a little bit at a time. Yeah. So yeah, can you give people some examples of people who might have transitioned to this as a way to make a viable living in your student body? I mean, obviously you probably have many examples, because 5,000
People who have gone to do it full time, you mean?
yeah, or you know, substantial amount of the time.
You know, when we began the class, I didn't think much about how many people will go full time. But if somebody had asked me, I would have said, yeah, I don't know if any will. I think when we started this, I think I was thinking a lot about actors, voiceover people, other performers and writers, but as an adjunct to what they do, something that maybe helps prop it up or extend the reach. Frankly, I didn't think about it much, but if you would ask me how many people, what percentage do you think are going to go full time, I probably would have said, I don't know if any, maybe 0.5%. And that was the first year, and then I learned better. So, David, do you have any estimate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how many in particular, but I can tell you that they're coming from all walks of life. One of our very early graduates who's become super successful is a guy who spent most of his life telling airplanes where to land at airports. He was an air traffic controller. And we've had people who have come from sales or come from customer service or come from other areas of acting, as Dan said, but didn't really think that audiobooks were a thing. They thought they were done by some really weird group of people that was in some studio in New Jersey or in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress, And the truth of the matter is that with the advent of ACX, which started in 2011, yeah, it started with a group of us. I was one of the first narrators on the platform. I was an audiobook Audible approved producer. And we were a group of seed producers that they contacted us. Hey, we're doing this new thing. Do you want to be part of it? Because I'd worked for Audible before, and I'd worked for other things before. So it was like this weird group of people that was online this time. So it wasn't in one particular location. But we've seen people who were lawyers, who were doctors, who were, I don't know, there was one person that was like a DoorDash guy, and now he wants to do this the whole time. And I would imagine so. I imagine how awful it might be to be some of these other things. And like you said, with the pandemic, voiceover was one of those areas that was working from home long before social distancing and sheltering in place. And I remember when it first started in March of 2020, it was really interesting to me that the whole rest of the world is now experiencing what we have been experiencing for decades, So it lends itself to that, no matter where you're coming from. How many people do it full time? I couldn't estimate, but here's the thing. That's your choice.
Yes.
You don't have to do it full time. It can be a side hustle. It can be part and parcel of the other areas of performance that you do. It can be something that you just do for your content. You just might decide, oh, okay, well, I want to know how to do this, but just for my books.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So fine, and I can't wait, by the way, for your book to come out with you being, because you have such this lovely, accessible, gorgeous little voice that is just so you. And I think
I wouldn't have done it 2 years ago, but the people's responses to my YouTube videos gave me the confidence.
Yeah. And I think this speaks to something that is often a question. Don't I need to be a really well-established voiceover person to do audiobooks? And I would say, just go on Audible and listen to all of the retail samples of the top 20, because some are going to be done by celebrities. Some are going to be done by really well-known voice talent that do audiobooks for a living. And some are going to be done by the authors of books. And not all of the authors of books are, trained voice talent.
Well,
but they have this inner voice. They likely have already spoken their words out loud anyway, because it's a way to do proofreading. And, did that work? Did that land on my ears the way it lands on the eyes? So yeah.
I've already forgotten what I was going to say because I was so impressed with what you're saying. By the way, this is how our class works. It's a lot of David saying, "What do you think, Dan?" and me saying, "I'm sorry, what?" One tip that I might offer, two things. Well, one is we have had more than one author take the class in order to voice his or her own audiobook, and then find they liked it so much that now they're talent. I mean, they're there to be hired to voice somebody's audiobook, and it doesn't have to be in their field. And I'm thinking of a couple, people in particular, David, and that was surprising to me that someone would enjoy it so much. Now, I'm a writer, and I've been one all my life, so I can understand the temptation to say, is there anything I could do instead of staring at this blank page, for hours? So I can understand it, but I certainly didn't expect it. And the tip I would offer you is, if you take our class, or if you learn audiobooks anywhere, I guess, the ones who succeed, the ones who work a lot, whether it's full-time or not, are the ones who actually do the work. It's, I'm sure all of us have had the experience of hearing somebody, these 10 things, these 10 steps, do this, and we listen, we take it in, but then we do it our own way. And that's a more rough road to travel. Just, especially if you've never dipped your toe in the world of audiobooks, I understand it's foreign, it's frightening, it's intimidating. And the very good news is you don't have to learn how to do all of it at once. We're going to start you with, okay, we're going to open your ACX profile, which is your listing on ACX. And by the way, we actually give homework assignments that you don't have to turn in. So we never know if you do it, but the very first week, one of the assignments we give is very specifically intended to drive people to ACX to listen to various genres and various types of narrators. And it just step by step. Okay, so now you've heard, and invariably, David, how do people respond after we give them that assignment and they write about it in the mastermind group? What are their common responses to listening to lots of demos?
Yeah, I think it changes their mindset in terms of how insurmountable this is, how, sort of detached it is, because they realize just how awful most of the people on ACX are. And there's a reason for this. The platform is democratized. So there's no gatekeepers. Anybody who wants to be on ACX can be on ACX. And that includes people that should not be allowed to be anywhere near a microphone ever, right? They wake up one bright sunny Tuesday morning and they go, yeah, I'm sick and tired of being an auto mechanic. I'm going to go be on ACX and do audiobooks, by God. And then you sit there and you go, okay, they're allowed to be here. And that creates this noise floor that you don't think about because you're not there yet. You're not looking there. But we actually make people focus on what they see just at random. And when they hear how much better they're going to be than what exists there now, there's a reason why casting directors exist, why directors and producers make choices. They want the best people involved. If you democratize access to that sort of thing, well, you reap what you sow. And so it really inspires them to go, oh, I really could do well here because everybody else isn't as good as I thought they would be, right? So I think
there's some professional, it's not really arrogance, it's maybe it's pride, professional pride that anyone who's been an audio engineer, voice actor, they know that they've been doing something for a living that most people don't do. And when those people find out, when they say, so what do you do? I'm a voice actor. There's a one-word response every single time that happens. The other person will say, really? And any voice actors in the audience, let me raise your hand, because that's the response. If you say, I work at a supermarket, you don't get a whole lot of really, but voice acting is mysterious. Now, having said that, if you come out of radio or voiceover or audio engineering, it is important to realize that you cannot simply take the skill set that you have so painstakingly and with hard work developed over perhaps decades. You can't just take it, go onto ACX and do it, because that's where a whole lot of the really terrible demos come from. It's different. It's not, audiobooks certainly are not harder than, let's say, radio, broadcast commercial work or radio. But if you look at commercial work, that's very different than an audiobook. Those of you who are voice actors who've done commercials, the number one goal of a commercial before anything else is to keep people from leaving. Oh, well, people don't like commercials, so we got to do something upfront to whatever. And people, by and large, most people don't really, if they're watching TV, it's not for the commercials. And on radio, they might do other things while the spots are playing. But with an audiobook, every single person who listens to your audiobook came to you. You don't have, there's no interruption. There's no fear that they're going to leave and check out another audio. They came to you, and they sure as heck want it to be good, because they're hoping to spend 10 or 20 hours with you on this topic. So if you're a voice actor, no matter how good you are, please understand that there are some adjustments that you need to make to your delivery. And David, I don't know if you've noticed that, especially voice acting profiles on ACX. Most people don't seem to understand that. I mean, they haven't thought about it.
Yeah. And that ties into what Daniela was, or what Dan was talking about earlier, about sending people the very first week their homework to both read profiles and see just how awful they are. Dan specializes as a writer in helping people write cogent, brief, provocative profiles that really draw people to you, as opposed to, just dumping your whole life onto them because more is better. Not only that, but also listening to what people have done and doing what they have known to be profitable for them in the past. A great example is a radio announcer being really pukey about, voicing an audiobook in that radio DJ kind of voice, and not making the adjustment to what is really exciting for an audiobook listener. So I feel like we're just piling on here the information for you, but it's
well, no, this is interesting, because I think we skipped something that might be very important to talk about, and that is the beast that is ACX. Like it in terms of your course, like working with two masters of the platform as well as of the craft, but actually the platform itself is a whole separate beast from the regular voice work, as Dan said. There's a whole side of marketing that you have to know if you're going to produce, if you're going to self-produce and narrate your own stuff and then release it. And the fact that you have a course that addresses all that, do you want to talk? I mean, I know you guys talk about process in terms of not only delivery, but editing and customer relations. Like, you guys cover so much. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know we
absolutely.
we
Yeah. So unlike the traditional role that a voice talent would play in the world of audiobooks before ACX, where you'd go to a studio, you'd talk, and then everything else would happen with somebody else, an editor, a proofer, a producer, a packager, and so on. Here, we train you to be the manager of the entire project, because you're going to be both recording it, editing it, mastering it, and preparing it for retail sale by Audible, by iTunes, by Amazon, etc. And that's a bigger responsibility. But what's cool about it is that it kind of ties in with both what voice people have been doing, voice actors have been doing for decades, working from home and doing things that go beyond just the performance. And also what's been happening for on-camera actors with the advent of much more widespread self-tapes, So for people that don't know, on-camera actors used to simply go to a studio somewhere, a casting office or a network studio or some, show's bungalow on a studio lot. And they would hang out in a waiting room with a bunch of other actors, and then they'd go in one at a time and do their little thing, and then they'd leave, right? Well, now it's all being done on cameras like this at home. And, this is my self-tape studio per se. And the same thing is leading people to understand that there's more of a production process and understanding that production process now than there was before. And you share in the profits on that. Because one of the things that ACX introduced was the concept of royalty share, where instead of just getting paid once to do the audiobook, you share in the ongoing income that Amazon/Audible gets from distributing your book. And I welcome that. I remember back in 2011 when this first came out, traditional audiobook narrators were like, what? I have to wait for the book to sell? And then I get a few pennies? And then I started making mortgage money on the books that I was doing on royalty share. And they were like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? So, it's interesting how things switch like that. But the notion of having a system that ACX specializes in and the way they put things together, we also show you how to take what you learn to make ACX work and its particular peccadillos and use it with all the other options that you'll have for work, like other platforms like Findaway Voices, or publishers like Penguin Random House, or producers like Dion Audio or Tantor, and there's literally hundreds of them. And all of them are relatively similar, but most of them don't require the production that ACX requires. But you need to know that. The good news there is production is a lot easier than it looks. I mean, a lot easier than it looks.
Wait a minute, David. Everybody knows producing an audiobook, especially if you're voicing it at the same time, is horrendous. It's a nightmare. It takes forever. You can't make any money. Well, why are you telling people these fibs?
I don't know why I'm telling. Well, maybe because I know better. I don't know, but it's like, yeah, we talk about one particular union narrator who was spending 20 hours of 23 hours of work on each hour of finished audiobook work. Now, look, if I knew that was the case, I'd be like stopping this interview right now and going, this is BS. Don't do this to yourself. But the truth of the matter is that the average audiobook narrator does between 6 and 10 hours worth of work for every finished hour of audiobooks. Our students and graduates, I teach a process that cuts that down to 2 to 3 hours per finished hour of work with no impact whatsoever on high quality. It's still the same high quality. Just the process, I wanted to have a more efficient process. And I look for these things. And that's when I came to Dan, 9 years ago. And I said, we should teach a course on this. And he goes, really? What? Tell me more about it. And then we had burgers and it was great. So
6,000 books later. Yeah.
Talking about if I'd be curious if anyone in the audience right now is on ACX already and what you're experiencing. And by the way, I see Mary Lynn is asking us to talk about financial stuff, and I assume we'd be glad to do that. Mm-hmm. If you're already on ACX and you're not doing as well as you wanted, I would start by looking at your profile. Your profile is not, here's the biggest mistake actors and voice actors make on ACX with a profile. They put up their professional resume. And why? That's just, look at me.
Yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile, you have most often an author, sometimes it's a publisher or an agent, somebody acting on behalf of somebody else, but usually it's an author. And they are looking for someone to produce and voice their audiobook. And they don't know anything about it. And what they want is they want to find someone who they feel they can trust, not in terms of honesty, but in terms of knows what he's talking about. It's like when you hire, I don't know, David's very handy at fixing things. So maybe David doesn't have this, but if I have to call, an electrician or a plumber or whatever it is, I would like to know that they know what they're doing, And so if you're already on ACX, I would encourage you to look at your profile from the point of view of that writer who is looking for someone who they think can do a good job and that they can actually trust to take over the whole project, to be the project manager. And once they find that person, they don't say, okay, this person looks really good. That sounds good. And I think you can do it. Let me go look at 100 more profiles. They don't do that. It's like, I for a long time, I talked about casting directors, and I have several friends who are very successful casting directors. And what I've learned from them is when they are in the process of casting, especially when it's not in-person acting, but maybe it's voiceover work, what they're not looking for the single best performance. They're looking for someone who can let them go home early today.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, oh, great. Now they can stop. And that's what it is there. So please, if you're on ACX, look at your profile and ask yourself, how does this speak to that rights holder or that author who's coming here? And I'll stop after this, because I know I'm going to offend some people here. If you come from the world of voiceover and you have a profile on ACX, even if this offends you or you don't believe me, I'm telling you, nobody in the world who is looking for an audiobook narrator cares what equipment you have in your studio. And this is standard for voice actors. Studio equipped with this, that, and the other, or with actors. Well, I actually got a lot of praise for my performance in Othello at the Hartford Stage Company. And I studied with this person. Yeah, but what's that? I'm a writer here. I got a book. I don't care. And in the world of acting, it's very common to say who you studied with. That's no. But for this, I studied. If you say in your profile, I studied voiceover with A, B, and C person, I believe you're doing yourself damage. You're not helping it at all. They're not looking for somebody who's studied. They're looking for somebody.
Marilyn, who asked about the pay grade, she is a filmmaker in New Zealand, so she knows that as a director, when she's casting, she's looking for the right person for the role. Like that's what she's looking for, right? Which is, I would imagine, I saw one of your alumni say that they paid for the course in 3 audiobooks. I imagine it varies by contract and it varies by the job, but
I also want to caution people not to jump to the return on investment calculus on this, because there's no way of predicting. And and the currency that you mentioned, some of the people that are attending and probably are watching on replay, is they're trying to take their content and make it accessible to more people. The currency there is exposure as well. And it's one of the best types of exposure, as opposed to, boy, I hope someday that somebody notices me. That's not it. Tell me what the question is about the finances, about the pay thing.
Basically what it pays. Can you speak to how much this pays and how the pay is organized by time, number of words, or?
Sure. So traditionally, audiobooks are paid based on the number of hours of the book, the length of the book, the finished length of the book. So if a book is 10 hours long, current union rates revolve around $200 to $250 per finished hour. And you negotiate these rates with the rights holder. If you're doing this for yourself, then you wouldn't pay yourself, but Audible splits the money with you when things are sold, and that's called royalty share. So there's 2 ways of doing this. royalty share and per finished hour. And there's a hybrid that, oddly enough, we started teaching very early on in 2014 when we started doing this, that I'd been using for a while, that had the rights holder paying me a little bit of an additional amount of money to do the work in addition to the royalty share, sort of a side deal. Now ACX does that as a matter of course. It's called Royalty Share Plus. So here's the good news for the entrepreneurs that are on this session. The royalty share normally, with some exceptions that go higher, not lower, is that Audible takes 60%, the author or rights holder, the publisher that owns the rights to the book, gets 20%, and the narrator gets 20%. So it's a 60-40 split between ACX, Audible in general, and the people producing the book, and then those two split their part 50-50. If you're an author who's doing their own narration, you get all 40% of that. Now, I want you to think to yourself, well, that's not, you might think that's not fair. Why are they getting so much more than we are? Because they're doing all the marketing, they're doing all the distribution, they're doing the whole stack of stuff. But I want you to think back to anybody who's done a book in the old days, in the olden times. You were lucky if you got a 1% royalty after you earned back any skimpy advance that they would give you, right? So it's gone from 1% to at least 20%. And if you're doing your own books, 40%. And you don't have to do anything after you've finished the work, right? You just sit back and see how it sells, and you do your promotion. You do the same things that you would do if you weren't getting a much larger royalty share. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's like, wow,
awesome.
okay. And this is the world of Amazon. This is the world of revenue sharing that goes on in internet marketing.
Yeah, and there was a ACX and Audible made a change in the royalty share arrangements some years ago, where they basically adjusted it so it was a few points less than it had been. And the hue and cry from the audiobook community, like twofold. Well, this ruins everything. And the other is, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. You know what? With the lower percentage that Audible pays or ACX pays, as David says, it's compared to what an author gets. The standard, and I've never understood why they say it this way, what the standard royalty, if you're just Joe Blow who wrote a book that the publisher wants, is 90% of 10% of the selling price. Now, why they don't say 9%, I haven't figured out. But here, this is a lot more.
Yes. Oh my God.
And by the way, let me pull up. I was watching.
Oh, yes.
Not watching. I was monitoring, and I'm not going to get it, so I'll get it later. But her name was Mary something, I think.
Oh, Marilyn Chambers. Yeah.
Who asked the question?
Yeah.
And you're from New Zealand, is that right? David and I actually have a special deal that we offer to Kiwis, and that is you can pay a third of your tuition in Anzac cookies or biscuits.
Jackie's also from New Zealand, who's tuned in. And
she news to me. I'm in.
Oh, okay.
Jackie has told me about those. That's why I'm laughing. Oh, that's incredible. No, I had, oh yes. And I was going to ask you, and Sandy asked a really good question about a pseudonym, but I want to preface that by saying, I'm not saying I know erotica writers, but I'm saying I know a ton of erotica writers who probably would want to do this, performing and writing, who have nothing to do with that in their regular day jobs. Is that a thing you see people do? And people publish under pseudonyms?
All the time.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. Yeah. In fact, we have someone taking the course who's already signed up for the course, who has let us know that she would like to just stay on the down low, and because maybe because she's wanting to go into that area, you know. Look, I get it. It's not for everybody, and it can affect other categories of work that you might do, or other avenues of pursuit of work that you might do. You don't want everybody at your day job knowing that you're an erotica performer or an erotica writer. I get that. But that happens to be the category of work that is 12 times more profitable than any other category of work in audiobooks.
Awesome.
So you go, girl.
And if you join ACX, you take a class and learn how to do all this stuff. You do not have to pick, you're not limited to the one name that you entered when you opened your profile.
Oh,
You want to add a pseudonym. If you want, you can have 5 different names if you want. You know, you can, the guy who does the rough and tumble, you know, fighting in the street stuff, and then you've got the one who does the erotica, and on and on. So when you begin at ACX, don't worry a whole lot about, oh, what name, probably your name. And if you want, you can add others, and you can add others whenever you want to. It's not just at that first moment.
It's
That's
actually
awesome.
per project. When you're done, it says, what credit do you want?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost the chat. I can't see the chat.
I got it.
Oh, you got him. Okay, so if you see any that I'm missing, because I'm
Just a lot of comments about how well I'm doing. Huh, thank you.
I'm going to repeat the link one more time if you want to check out their current offer, because it's incredible, actually, when you put this all together and think about how it benefits you as a performer, as a business person, as a writer. bit.ly/ACX Mondo, MONDO. The link is further up in the chat, and I'll email everybody after, but this is like hugely valuable to me. Let's talk about something I love to talk about in coffee break. How much overhead does this business have? Because I look for the low overhead, the low hanging fruit businesses to start.
Well,
First,
I love this.
let's go into the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
15, 20 years ago, about 30 grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Today, David?
Today, depending upon your home, and if you can find a quiet space, a little over $200.
Cheers.
If you need to quiet your space, then I can't really tell you, because it depends on what's causing the noise, what you can do to ameliorate the noise, etc. You may spend a little bit more on that, but not nearly, it wouldn't be thousands of dollars unless you decided you wanted to buy a professional voice booth like a Studio Bricks or a Whisper Room. But, you know, I remember even in the year 2003, I was doing a radio show on XM and Sirius, and on about 150 radio stations across the country. And CBS, who owned the channel that I was on, came in and retrofitted my second bedroom as a radio studio. And it cost them about $35,000 to do that.
Wow.
Last year, I found out that the building next door to us was going to undergo jackhammer renovation. So I bought myself a Studio Bricks so that I could continue to do the work with a quieter space. And that cost me about $15,000. Most of the time, some moving blankets or a walk-in closet with clothes in it is going to do the trick. And the microphone, I have a microphone on the shelf up there. All the time when I do this, I look up at the microphone and I'm admiring the fact that it's on my shelf in its oak box, a Neumann U87, which is about a $3,800 microphone. I haven't used it in a decade because the technology has gotten so much better on less expensive microphones. The general rule is don't use USB microphones. And in general, that's a good rule to follow, except for the microphone that I use and that I recommend that our students use, that on a bad day on Amazon is like $120. It was $150, and this is indicative of what happens with technology and with better pricing and sourcing and everything. It's now usually around $99, and it's one of those rare USB microphones that is awesome. I use it for my work all the time. You know, there's a phrase in business called he eats his own dog food or she eats her own dog food. And what it means is I'm a consultant, I'm a coach. I do what I tell you to do. I use the gear that I tell you to use. I use the processes as opposed to saying, oh, here's what you should do, but here's what I do. Right? So the cost has dropped by several orders of magnitude. And currently, you don't spend more than a few $100 to get into this business and stay in this business. It's not like, okay, this is what you use when you first start off. I've been using the AT2020 USB Plus, which is the microphone that we recommend, for about a decade.
Wow.
And I love it. And it's awesome. And nobody believes me until they start doing it. You should see the arguments I get into in the professional audiobook narrator groups on Facebook who are like, you're out of your mind. You could never do that. You know, I get it. It's hard when you've already spent $10,000 on all your gear. And here I come trundling along doing audiobook after audiobook after audiobook with something that costs a fraction of what you paid.
Right.
But that's the barrier to entry.
That's why when you pursue audiobooks and you take our advice and don't waste money, but get things that are really, really good that don't cost as much as studio bricks, let's say, to deaden sound. Please remember this. And you remember that guy, I can't remember his name, but he said this would happen. You're going to be lectured to by longtime audio engineers who are, you know, you're using a USB microphone. Okay, there's no reason that a USB microphone can't deliver good sound. The reason most of them don't is USB mics are built to be competitively priced. So they use pretty much the cheapest innards that they can. And that's fine for most people. You know, people will say, well, I have a Yeti, it's fine, you know. And for what they do, apparently it works. You know, it's not good enough for professional work. But there's no actually physics-based reason that a USB mic cannot sound just as good. I don't know as annoying, but cannot be far above the minimum that you need to do professional work. And if some of you guys, when David mentioned a closet in your house, some of you might have, that's silly. I believe you would be shocked if you knew the percentage of national commercials that you have been exposed to on radio and television, even if it's a well-known voice actor, recorded in that person's closet. Yeah. And as David said, leave the clothes in because that deadens the sound. There's a little bit of kind of trivia. If you really want to appear more knowledgeable than anyone wants you to be, there's no such thing as soundproofing. There's sound deadening. But you know, even soundproof studios, when a jet happens to land on the roof, you know, things happen. So you just, and the other tip, and I learned this from Harlan Hogan, the other tip, if you really have limited space, is to understand the only thing that actually has to be in a quiet area, a sound deadened or almost soundproofed area, is the microphone. And so there are some people, and this, I don't think this is the most physically comfortable way to do it, but there are some people whose space is so small that they've got the microphone in the protected area and they're right outside it and their voice goes into the mic, but they're not inside it themselves. So it's, I find the idea that voiceovers and voice acting can be done from home to be really amazing and cool. But
yeah, oh my God.
When that audio engineer laughs at you, or probably they'll say, oh, I know who told you that, but boy, they don't know what they're talking about. That person has a professional studio that they equipped 20, 25 years ago, and they spent $30,000, $35,000 on it. Guess what? They have not continued to look for equipment. They have not kept current on prices. All they know is when they were building their studio, this is what it cost. And, things change.
Can we talk, because I want to get to your offer and my offer, but I want to ask you one more pragmatic question for me, because I'm a doer. I put things into practice right away. If I take your course, what's my timeline from taking your class, which I know is going to save me literally months of trial and error, and probably a lot of money too, of trial and error, and is going to teach me how to negotiate on ACX. Once I do all that, what's my timeline to creating a book?
Well, the way you asked the question, no one's going to believe our answer. So I'll let David do it.
I didn't hear what Dan just said, but it sounded like I should talk. Okay, so one of the things that happens before I answer your question more fully is that without fail, every single class that we've done, people start landing bookings during the class, and the class only lasts for 4 weeks.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Somebody gets a book from the moment they start to experiment putting up their profiles and their samples. And so the answer could be from 0 time, in fact, negative time, because you haven't finished the course yet. If you're talking about how long does it usually take to produce a book, or, okay, so that can vary. I mean, I've produced books in less than 2 days, short books that, I will voice and edit and be ready for retail sale within 48 hours. Usually it's 5 to 7 days for normal 6 to 10 hour books. And that's working on it probably a third of the time during the day, because I got other things to do just like you do. But here's the great news. On ACX, you get 60 days. That's the standard length of time in their boilerplate contract to get a book done.
Oh.
So yeah, there are some people who would like you to do it faster, and you can say to them, I'm not available. And the power of no is amazing. Yeah, no, I can't do it. Oh, well, what about 40 days? What about 60 days? Like it says in the contract. All of a sudden, it becomes a negotiation. But this is not a business where people push. This is not we've got to get this last shot in before golden time. This is not that kind of an area. But in terms of how long it will take, again, we talked about work hours versus finished hours. Depends on the length of the book, and it depends on how engaged you are with what we show you how to do. So I guess the answer that I can give you is usually plenty of time. There's plenty of time for you to get this stuff done, So is that an answer to your question?
Yes, because mentally, I want to be releasing a book in April. So I just wanted to know if that was even realistic. And it sounds like if your course is 4 weeks, and when does it start? In a week, right?
Yeah, so our registration is this week as we're recording this live. I don't know when you're watching this in a replay, but as we're recording this live, registration ends this Friday, February 3rd at 9 p.m. Pacific time here in the States. And then we start class the following Monday, like 2 days later, 3 days later. So, and then we have classes every Monday live. They're recorded, so if you can't make them, it's okay. We release the recordings the next day. And then we do live Q&As every Thursday, and this is for 4 weeks. We also release new content every single day, other than weekends, throughout the entire month. So we're layering things on over and over and over throughout that time period, and we're asking you to do things that you're going to engage with the process. Like Dan said, first profiles, then demos, then we do fiction and nonfiction coaching. Then we start telling you about the process of recording and editing with the equipment and the process. And then we talk about marketing, protecting yourself from scams, knowing about the other platforms, and building your business, dealing with your clients and your projects and so on. And so it becomes this total cocooning of creating a business from scratch, not just how to record audiobooks, but everything else.
Yeah.
And usually by the time you're done, if you're engaged, you could take on a book when you're finished, or even before you're finished with the course, and you could likely get it done within a few weeks.
And I when the first, it never occurred to me when we started this class that anyone would be offered a book before the class was over. It simply never occurred to me. And the first time it happened, I remember, the person emailed me for advice, and I said, "Look, you're gonna get other offers. My recommendation is you wait until you really learned everything here before you do it. Because there's no point in putting an unfair amount of pressure on yourself. But if you're new to audiobooks, just like if you're an actor when you started out, at the beginning, you find it hard to believe anyone will offer you a job. And like, I can't afford it. Certainly if you come from radio, where unemployment is our national flag. It's like there's this feeling of, oh, I have to take it because I don't know if anybody will ever offer me another one. They will. Having said that, every class, as David said, there are people who get offered a book even without trying, because the first thing we do is we have them work on their profiles. And just as narrators look through ACX for work, rights holders, authors, publishers, they browse through ACX actively looking for people. If they haven't found someone yet, this profile looks interesting. Let's see what this guy is. So if you're not ready, don't put the extra pressure on yourself. But if you have done everything, all the classwork in real time, so you set up your microphone, which is easy, but you learned how to use it. You followed our directions with the software, which is free. You did everything and you're pretty comfortable. Yeah, at the end of the class, I'm not saying that you're going to be as good at the end of the class as you will be after 5 years of experience. But, look at, I don't know if I should name names, David, so I won't, but someone named Joseph, whom we know, was offered in our first, I think it was the first class we taught, and he was offered an audiobook in his 4th week of the class, and it exploded. He had never done an audiobook, had never edited audio, nothing. And several months later, he finds himself at a big banquet for the audio awards because his audiobook was one of 5 finalists for an Audie.
Oh, that's great.
Now, clearly he had to listen, he had to pay attention, he had to actually do the work, and he had talent. And it's not even talent as much as a dedication to it, because it just isn't difficult.
Yes.
But you got to learn it.
We got more questions.
Yeah.
We got more questions. Okay. Great info here, says Brian in Winnipeg. Are most audiobook narration gigs non-union? Percentage of non-union versus union? Thanks.
Do you mean on ACX or in the world in general?
It's the same for both, but yeah, I mean, audiobooks in general are not treated the same way that other categories of work are treated. All of the contracts, union contracts, are individual contracts, not blanket contracts. So the kind of odd positioning of audiobooks as opposed to network television or stage or anything is not union job, so only union people can do it, versus non-union jobs, so only non-union people can do it. All audiobook jobs are either union and non-union, or they don't exist. So union people can take them, non-union people can take them, union people can take them without fear that the union will say anything if the contract doesn't meet union requirements. I do know that ACTRA, which is the Canadian union, has this weird, odd audiobook contract that hopefully they're constantly being made fun of for, because it's just dumb. Whereas with SAG-AFTRA, we're trying to bring more people under the tent. We're trying not to criminalize our members, with other areas of more established work with blanket contracts that all of the networks have signed on to, there is a penalty involved in being a union member and doing non-union work. Not so with audiobooks. So the answer to, is it Brian, did you say?
Yep. Brian in Winnipeg, yeah. But I'm
to answer to Brian's question, it depends on which union you're in, but 99 times out of 100, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think Brian's non-union, but I do want to give you an update from ACTRA, because one of the ACTRA members gave this to me, who's on a committee about this. I was relieved to hear it, because I am an ACTRA performer, and I know the audiobook contract is complex and not. Sorry, ACTRA, just not workable for most voice actors, from what I've heard from the veterans. So what I did hear was this is great news for all of us who produce our own content, that we could pay into our benefits ourselves. If I do my own audiobook, I can do my own union contract for my own book and just top up my and pay into my benefits, which is, I think that's fantastic for me to as a self-produced narrator. So that is great. Yeah, because I don't want to be penalized for doing my own book as a union member. So
exactly.
And going back to SAG-AFTRA, although you cannot be penalized at all, David, every job offered on ACX, there's no job that says union members only or non-union. Anybody can audition for, and if the person likes their work, be hired. Just a little bit of it's not fine print, but getting into the weeds a little bit. If you're a SAG-AFTRA member, you can't get it. You can accept any offer on ACX without getting in trouble with the union, period. Having said that,
great.
There is another factor, and you touched upon it, which is not every offer on ACX will pay enough to qualify for union coverage. So depending on where you are in your audiobook career, if you're just starting out and you're charging kind of a lower rate than, you should charge more, but you're afraid. So you do it a little lower at first. It might not be enough to qualify you for, contributions to, what is it, and health?
Health and retirement. Health and
retirement. So, as David has pointed out in the past, there are quite a few actors who do audiobooks each year until they reach the point where they've hit the minimum for to remain members in good standing for the next year.
To get their benefits, yeah.
And that's I think that's cool, because I do know actors who, we all know actors who at some point in their career, suddenly they're concerned about this. By the way, it happens to writers too. The Writers Guild, same thing.
Definitely happens to writers too. And we have more questions here. Amelia asks, is ACX your primary source for gigs, or can you recommend one or two other platforms? You mentioned a few before, but yeah.
Yeah, it depends on where you are in your journey. There are some people who rely on ACX solely, but there's Findaway Voices in terms of other platforms. There's Authors Republic. There are probably a dozen major publishers, Macmillan, Simon & Schuster, Houghton Mifflin, Penguin Random House. Many of them are produced by Penguin Random House, certainly Audible itself. ACX is just one part of Audible's much bigger business. And then there are independent producers like Scribe and Dion and Tantor and Highbridge and Brilliant and Listen Up, and it goes on and on and on. I happen to serve on the union's Audiobook Narrator Steering Committee, and we have reviewed and approved well over 120 contracts over the last 2 or 3 years that were slowly paralleling, so that they all kind of end at the same time and begin at the same time, have similar terms. And again, any of that work can also be done by non-union, and all of those people are happy to do that as well. But one of the things that we've been very diligent about over the last few years is to take what we teach in the ACX Masterclass and spend a good half of the last week showing you how to apply the strategies and the tactics to all of these other opportunities in the business.
Great.
And by the way, I think Mary Lynn and Jessica are going to be pretty peeved with us if we don't address their question.
Yes, because Jessica's in London and Marilyn's in New Zealand, and they're dying to know the time for the live Q&A.
Well, so Marilyn's in New Zealand, so she's got that inferiority complex because she's not in Australia. And London, I mean, come on, have you seen the weather there? No, I'm kidding about New Zealand. I know that that Australia exists to make New Zealanders feel better about themselves. So, we do Q&A. Our Q&A classes are Thursday night. They're done live. And to answer your question, they begin at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Typically, let's see, the Q&A, what was 1 to 2 hours for Q&A, David?
Depends. Later on in the course, because we have one Q&A on the last day where we say you can ask about anything you want. Usually we tell people only ask questions about what you learned this past week, just to keep it kind of manageable. But then the last day it goes a little bit longer, and we wait. People have whatever they want, and if they can't make the Q&A session, they can email us questions ahead of time. The live classes on Mondays are the same situation. If you want to ask questions about what we've assigned you as homework, great. Otherwise, ask in the discussion group, in the mastermind group. And we record both. We record both the class on Monday and the Q&A on Thursday. So even if you can't attend them live, you can still send questions ahead of time, and we'll ask them for you and answer them for you as well. We don't forget to do that. And then you can hear the recordings the very next day. We get them up usually right after the session has finished recording. So, and we have people who are working actors in our course. They can't attend it live. They're still on set, or they're still at their own studios, or they're still doing, promo work or commercial work or whatever it is. So everybody has a kind of a different approach to it. Some people can't wait. They're sitting there, they're waiting at 5:55 p.m. for us to open the doors, and they're going to be there live, and they're going to stay till the end, and that's great. But if that's not you, that's okay, because we've got you covered.
I was going to say, Jessica's a leading script supervisor in London, but it'll be 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in London. So you probably, when you're getting home from work, you'll run into the Q&A live sometime.
It's funny. We had, I think you remember, Dan, Jim in Scotland, who would stay up until 1 a.m. to attend the class live. He was fascinated by it.
Yeah, for him, it was the fun factor. He just enjoyed it so much.
But we don't expect people to do that, so that's why we record it.
And I can imagine someone hearing this and thinking, yeah, but it's recorded, not the same. Well, you've had the experience of throughout your life of watching hundreds, thousands of TV programs that were recorded, but they were recorded live. It used to be live on tape from Hollywood, the Johnny Carson show from the East Coast. But when you were watching it, think about that. If you watched the Tonight Show, did you feel like you were watching a recording, or did you feel like you were watching live interaction?
It felt so live. Oh, Sandy asks the length of each class. It must vary, right? By module?
It's usually a couple of hours, if not a little bit longer.
Yeah,
but just to add to what Dan said, you can't rewind live, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages to it. And the course itself, yes, we have that live portion on Monday nights and the Q&As on Thursday night, but there's probably 10 times as much content being released on pre-recorded video, in text, in pictures, in web pages that are updated on a regular basis with a lot of the other content. Certainly examples where Dan will take a look at, this is just as example, he'll take a look at certain profiles on ACX and critique them to let you see what works and what doesn't work, what doesn't work. And so there's probably 10 to 20 times as much content that's released outside those live islands all throughout the month.
And is
So,
there a group? Is there a community?
oh
Yeah,
my
that's
gosh.
perfect. I was thinking at this very moment, I was thinking, and there's a whole lot going on in the mastermind group. So with every class that we teach, our yearly class, like for this class, we have created a special mastermind group solely for the people who are taking this class right now. And once the class is over, then we invite them to join our permanent mastermind group, which is hundreds and I don't know, I don't know the exact number right now, but it's hundreds of people who have gone through the class. And it's the coolest, best mastermind group in the world.
I think coffee break is.
I only say that because I've checked out all. Oh, I mean for anyone.
Your voice, yeah.
What I hear a lot is, boy, coffee break is like just this far behind you, man. You better keep. And that's because David and I have talked about this a lot. It's because we got lucky. The first class, the people were so giving and open and wanting to help each other. They set the tone that has remained to this day. You don't go there to complain about stuff and to pick fights and to attack people. No, you go there either to share your experiences, good or bad, to ask for help from your colleagues, or to offer help. And David, I really do credit something about the makeup of the members of our very first class for setting that tone.
Yeah. And Dan's threats.
Certainly wasn't from David. I mean, look how unpleasant he looks.
You guys, okay, so I do you want to talk about because there's like an early if you join early, and I know I got you guys late because I was supposed to be in LA, so that I didn't think I was going to be able to join you guys, but then I did go to LA and I'm like, oh, I want to get in on ACX because I want to be there in the class. How talk about the early bird deadline and the regular deadline before the doors close for another who knows how long. Yeah.
So we have a week's worth of registration being open. We opened on yesterday morning, and we'll close for good on Friday night at 9 p.m. But if you want to do this, you want to do this, is something that you really are placing as a priority, we want to reward you for early action. So between now and tomorrow night, as we're recording this on Monday evening, the 30th of January, but between now and tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, so on the 31st of January at 9 o'clock Pacific time, we will pay the first $300 of your tuition. So the normal retail price of the class is $19.95, but through tomorrow night at 9 p.m. it's $16.95. And then once that goes away, and then it'll be $19.95 for the rest of the week. So if this is something that you really want to do, if this is something that you can say, okay, I know I want to do this, I want to do this now, I would suggest that you head over to the link that Daniela has for you in the course. She'll repeat it for you, I'm sure, several times before we're finished, and she'll put it in the notes on the Facebook thing and YouTube. It'll show up in YouTube as well. Do that so we know you watched this and you came to us from her. You'll get it for $300 less than you would if you waited until after tomorrow night. Dan, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Although if someone's wondering why do they do that, like what does Tuesday matter, whether we sign up by Tuesday or Friday? One of the biggest, I think it might be the biggest reason we do that is if you join us on Tuesday, we have more time to process you, to get you into the class, to get you into the mastermind group, to get you into the private class website. Almost everybody is programmed to do something at the last moment. I mean, certainly you writers out there, if it weren't for deadlines, we wouldn't write anything, right? So that's why it's to our benefit if you join us by Tuesday rather than 8 o'clock Friday night, which a lot of people do. You think about it and you worry about it and but if you know you want to go for this, why not let us pay the first $300 for you?
And a lot of them being entrepreneurs can feel you on this. If you were like me, I often had a cart close on January 1st and I'd be up all night New Year's Eve processing payments because I didn't do an early thing, which I'll always do an early bonus again. But I think that's great. And I think the entrepreneurs in the group could feel you on that. And I want to add a little bonus, by the way. The link is bit.ly/ACX Mondo. My first ever short link. I'm so proud of myself. But the bonus, if you use my link to access their program, I'm going to give you guys 6 months free inside Coffee Break MBA. And if you're already inside Coffee Break MBA, I'm going to extend your deadline by 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
6 months of coaching, of entrepreneurial coaching, in addition to all the incredible coaching. And listen, Dave is one of my coaches, so I understand how great he is as an entrepreneurial coach. Because I mean, separately from voice, I haven't worked with you in voice yet, but I'm dying to. So 6 months inside Coffee Break, which is, for those who don't know, I have a community of 50 international solopreneurs who are artists of many different stripes, and they're starting all different kinds of online businesses. And this would so complement so many of our businesses in that group. So 6 months free in there. And I'm also adding my coffee breakers. Actually, I had a little chat with my coffee breakers yesterday about what bonuses am I going to offer. And they all said, bring them into Coffee Break to show them how great it is. And then someone had this great idea. What about for the writers? What about if the writers love this program and then they want to write their own book, but they don't know what to write? Well, I have these really popular 5-day challenges. They're for screenplays, but as one of my writers astutely said, your feature film screenplay challenge applies to books. So I have a 5-day personal feature film comedy premise creation challenge. That is a premise generating machine. It's one of my most popular products. And I'll also give that to you free as a bonus. So hopefully it will appeal to both the writers and the entrepreneurs. So yeah,
Great.
Sounds good.
Lovely. Yeah. If there's anything we can do to help you with that, that's great. I think that, the other thing is we're kind of rewarding you for taking action, for having a bias for action. Yeah. It's one of the things that I take a great deal of pride in, is that I would rather get something off my plate. And it literally, it's self-preservation. Yeah. It's like, I want to get something done rather than leaving it to the last minute, because Lord knows the internet's going to go out. My hard drive's going to crash. The camera's going to overheat. Something's going to go wrong. And I'd rather get it done now. And I can tell you that the people that show up early are the ones that really are committed to their future and designing their legend. And I love that. And so that's why we also are doing that. But I'm spending the time with the people that have already signed up. I'm spending time, writing thank you notes and getting their packages ready, because we send out a welcome package that includes a mic sock, which is a pop filter for mics that works really well and helps with audiobooks because it lets you get nice and close to your microphone. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and we want to kind of reward people for getting that decision done now.
And we're also during that time period, we're matriculating you into the mastermind group. Our mastermind group is on Facebook. For people, I heard you, 3 people out there said, I'm not getting on Facebook. No way, man. Just for you, we have a parallel mastermind group that is not on Facebook. That's on our own private site. And so we're, ushering you into the groups. Right. We're getting the materials to you. You also get a head start in meeting your fellow classmates, classmates in the group. And it's kind of cool. People are making friends, and it's neat and everybody's excited. They're nervous and excited.
Does it ever happen that some of your producing students hire the voice students from the group? I would imagine that kind of networking must go on with your alumni.
There was at least one person, David, who was asked to produce a duo voice book.
Yeah, the things that you start to be able to explore, there's a concept of duet narration and dual narration, as well as multicast narration. There's all these shades that you'll get into once you get the basics of solo narration down. Duet narration, a great example of this is Soon I Will Be Invincible, which is a book about superheroes from the perspective of a male superhero who's in jail and a female superhero who put him in jail, and a supervillain who's in jail. And so one chapter is done by the guy, one chapter is done by the girl. They go back and forth. And then there's dual narration where male characters are done by the male narrator, female characters, and they share the neutral narrator. And then multicast, which is kind of like big, very much like radio dramas. And it's also expanding into podcasting. So there's all kinds of things that you will end up being exposed to and also having a level of comfort with. It's like, oh yeah, this is something to explore. Yeah, this is something we could do. Okay, yeah. And then if you don't understand something, like, wait a minute, how do I use ACX for duet or dual narration? Well, you don't. And you go to the discussion group to say, how can we do this? Okay, here's a platform where you can do this. So we try to make sure that all of the things that you're learning in the course become the bedrock for everything else that you're going to learn as you do this. And for those that are watching this and going, I just want to narrate my own book, that's all, that's the only reason I'm here, you know, that's fine. That's fine. You get a complete sort of comfort level around that sort of thing, and you can use it for whatever you want.
It just adds to your own celebrityhood. David, what was the title of that book you mentioned with the superheroes?
Soon I Will Be Invincible.
Now, is that based on a true story?
Yes.
Just wondering.
Marilyn says, thank you. This has been a fantastic session. Learned a ton, and the times work for her. Great. Okay, everyone. We went, wow, we went an hour and a half. I was like, Dave, this won't go longer than an hour. We went an hour and a half. Yikes. But it's been great. I've been into, like, I have not been watching the time, evidently. So thanks everyone who came in live. I'm going to email everyone the replay, and the early bird bonus offer ends tomorrow at 9 p.m. in LA, which is midnight here tomorrow. So
and just to be clear on tomorrow, if you're watching the replay, this is being recorded on Monday evening, January 30th. So please don't complain. It's like, I'm watching this in April. How come this isn't available?
Yeah. Right. True. My bonus is available to you whenever you purchase. I thought you closed on Sunday, so I'm glad you told me you closed on Friday. So
yeah, Friday night. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure I'm clear about that in the email. Thanks so much, everyone, and thanks to David and Dan again. You guys are always great. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are awesome, Daniela.
Bye.
Thanks.